I'm Verity and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, why not think about subscribing so you don't miss out on my next video. In today's video I have 3 cards where I'm combining colour blocking with heat embossing. Colour blocking is a great way to add colour to your heat embossing quickly and without too much fuss spending hours colouring in. If you love to colour in, that's fine, but for a quick alternative when time isn't on your side, colour blocking works just as well. Okay, so the first technique for colour blocking is to use coloured card. This is by far the quickest and easiest out of the 3 I'm showing you today. Now I've gathered some scrap pieces of card in yellow, orange and red to create a colour blocked background to heat emboss on, and it's great for using scraps of card up. I've applied strips of double-sided adhesive tape onto a scrap piece of white card and removing a few of these pieces of backing to adhere the yellow card down. Now the orange piece is a bit bigger than I wanted, so I'm just eyeballing how much to trim this down by. Once all the pieces are adhered down, I can use my guillotine to trim off any excess card that overhangs and trim it down to about 5 inches by 3¼ inches. Now I've created a card panel made up of blocks of coloured card to heat emboss on. For this background I'm using the Spiral Rose background stamp from Whimsy Stamps, and I've removed the foam pad from the Misty stamp platform because this is a rubber background stamp. I've also used a Misty corner magnet to position the card panel in the middle of the stamp, and I've adhered a makeshift card handle out of scrap card so I can pick up the card panel later on without actually getting my fingers over the background. So I'm inking the panel up with Wow Clear Ultra Slow Dry Embossing ink and stamping this out onto the background. As this is quite a delicate pattern, I'm using superfine metallic gold rich pale embossing powder to ensure I maintain the intricacy of that stamped background. Next, I'm using my dual speed heat gun to melt the powder and create a beautiful gold embossed background, which has colour blocking to add the interest to it. So for the second technique, I'm using a water spritzed ink printing to create a colour block to heat emboss onto. So I've got an acrylic stamp block here. This is 4 by 3 inches Gina K block, but you can use any you have to hand. Next, I'm smooshing my ink pad down onto the block to transfer the ink. First of all, I'm smooshing Tiara down, followed by Orange Twist, and then lastly Samba ink, all from Catherine Pooler Designs. Once the block is covered in ink, I'm spritzing the block quite liberally with clean water until the ink starts to bead up. Keeping the block in the same position, I'm taking a piece of distressed watercolour card and placing this over the top. Now I place a piece of scrap paper over the top to help me press down over the block without getting any ink onto my fingers, but actually the block was smaller than the card, so no ink should have really smooshed out over the side. I'm keeping the pressure on for about 10 to 15 seconds just to make sure that the ink gets absorbed into the paper before I lift it off. Then I'm lifting the paper up to reveal a lovely blended block of colour on my cardstock. Once this is dry, you can then heat emboss over the top. Now I used my dual speed heat gun on setting 1 just to speed up the drying process, and I've placed the panel into my Misty. The stamp set I'm using here is the Petite Floral frame from Hickey Designs, as this was a perfect size frame to sit with inside the colour blocking. Again, this is stamped in clear ultra slow dry embossing ink, and then I'm covering this with Wow Opaque bright white embossing powder. As you melt the powder, the white really just pops off the colourful ink blocking that we've created. Okay, for the last technique today, we are going to create colour blocking with masked ink blending. To start off, I've adhered a piece of white cardstock to my mat, and I've masked over 1/2 inch at the top and bottom of the card using Heavy Doodle memo tape. Next, I'm using the same tape to mask off 1/4 inch vertical area on the card. To add the colour, I'm using a blending tool and foam pad to add Samba ink to the masked area. I'm using a heavy pressure at the top and lightening this up as I move down the area to get a graduated look to the ink blending. Once happy with that blend, I then remove the tape, masking the vertical area off, and move the tape over 1/4 of an inch to the left of this. So for this section, I'm using Orange Twist ink blend, again darker colour up the top and lightening the blending and the colour as I move down the pant area. Lastly, I'm repeating the step once more, but this time I'm using the Tiara ink to add the colour. Now I've created this in a vertical pattern, but you could easily switch it up and go horizontally instead. So for the heat embossing, I'm stamping the heart from the Concord and 9th All My Love stamp set in clear ultra slow drying embossing ink. For this card, I wanted the heat embossing to be a little bit more subtle and went for a tone-on-tone look using one of the Glint's embossing powders. So here I've covered it with Oyster Glint's embossing powder and heat set it. And this does give a lovely tone-on-tone look when heat set, but because I've used a Glint's powder, it has a lovely pearlescent shine to it when the light hits it, which looks stunning. Okay, just to finish the cards off, I've added the Altenew Happy die cut to the front, along with a heat embossed birthday sentiment from Julie Hickey Designs on the coloured card background. The floral frame card used the sentiments from the Petite floral frame stamp set, which was heat embossed in white on black card. And for the last card, I've stamped the sentiment from All My Love stamp set in white on black card as well. All of these sentiments were foam mounted just to add a little bit more depth and interest to the cards. Lastly, the cards were finished off with a selection of Nouveau Jewel drops in Strawberry Coulis, Rosewater and Limoncello. I hope you've enjoyed creating cards using colour blocking with heat embossing, and it is a quick way to add colour if you're limited on your time. Don't forget to let me know which card is your favourite in the comments below. If you enjoyed today's video, please give it a thumbs up and why not subscribe to the channel. Don't forget to hit that bell icon to be notified when the next video is up. This was produced as part of my design teamwork for Wow Embossing Powder, and links are listed below. For 10% discount at the shop, just enter the code you can see on screen. Also, why not check out this other video for some more inspiration. Until next time, happy crafting!